Henry Martin was a deacon and well-known member of the Charlottesville Black community.
Henry Martin, born enslaved, working all of his life either as an enslaved person or working as a menial laborer, never learned to read and write. But he was able to speak for himself through photography.
John Edwin Mason is the curator of an exhibition of portraits like Martin's, now on display at the University of Virginia's Special Collections Library. Martin's larger-than-life portrait is featured along with historical items that contextualize it. He was a man so iconic, a poem was written about him a century later.
Someone will pause to whisper, Henry, and for a moment, my name flies free.
Martin's self-portrait contradicts and undermines how white students and alumni would portray him.
He's a guy who has sort of a paper trail about him, a paper trail that talks about his dignity, that talks about his competence at his job, but is always patronizing. He's always seen as the faithful servant, seen as deferential, seen as knowing his place.
Martin, historians believe, paid to have his portrait taken at the Holsinger Studio, a white-owned Charlottesville photography shop.
It's a way of saying, this is who I am. This, no trace of his job as a janitor and bell ringer, and this showing him with tremendous dignity and pride in the same way that you would show a wealthy and powerful white man. It is a remarkable act of self-representation.
All the portraits featured in this exhibit were taken at the Holsinger Studio several decades after the South lost the Civil War, and during the so-called New Negro movement that centered self-advocacy in black communities. The people photographed were soldiers, seamstresses, and stable managers.
They are really stunning in the way that they show dignity, respectability, style, panache among African Americans who lived in Central Virginia in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. That's a time of Jim Crow segregation. That's a time when there were lynchings in this area, and yet you could see none of that.
The University of Virginia used at least 4,000 enslaved black people to build and maintain the school in the 19th century. The descendants of enslaved communities at UVA and other community groups are bringing this history to light. Charlottesville is still grappling with how to address its racist history. In 2020, the University of Virginia erected this memorial to enslaved laborers to honor the black people enslaved by the school. The Holsinger Studio Portrait Project aims to show a different side of the people enslaved and their descendants, the side they wanted immortalized in portraiture. For Henry Martin, those portraits told the story of his life through his eyes, a story still being told by those who were connected to him, like Edwina St. Rose.
His first wife would have been a great aunt of mine, so he's special to me.
St. Rose's other family members, a great uncle and her grandfather, owned a business in Charlottesville. Their photos are also featured in the exhibit.
And they were operating a barber shop that their father, who would have been my great-grandfather, established in 1865. So that's a pretty long history to cover. People now understand that, there is a segment of the Charlottesville society that needs to have their story told and celebrated.
She works to preserve black history here with the Daughters of Zion Cemetery, the city's historically black cemetery where Henry Martin is buried. How do these portraits defy conventional thought processes or conventional thoughts around black people and their role in society?
Nobody in these portraits looks oppressed. Nobody looks bedraggled. Nobody looks beaten down. And that's by design.
For Charlottesville, like much of the country, its reckoning with racism is ongoing. There were attempted lynchings in the city as late as 1917. In the 1960s, historic black communities were razed to the ground by the city. In 2017, a white supremacist mob held a violent, deadly rally in Charlottesville in response to a decision to remove a Robert E. Lee statue.
The university has not always been a good neighbor to the African American community. We've learned a lot about Charlottesville's history in terms of its Confederate memorials. We've learned the hard side of history. We've learned about oppression. We have not learned about Black life, Black joy, Black family, Black churches, Black schools, Black politics, Black style. All of those things have been in the background, and through these portraits, we're bringing them into the foreground.
Mason worked with undergraduate students and the UVA library exhibition curator to sort through 10,000 glass plate negatives they acquired from the Holsinger Studio archives to create the exhibit. The exhibit also features other examples of Black self-expression, like the only known surviving copy of Charlottesville's Black newspaper from that time, the Charlottesville Messenger, and juxtaposes them with yearbooks and white media portraying racist stereotypes.
I want to tell stories about history through this exhibition. Yes, the portraits are gorgeous, and I'm well aware of that, and that's one of the thrills of coming to this exhibition. But I actually want people to also come and read.
For young students, the stories behind the pictures are part of what bring the exhibit to life.
I would look at some artifacts and I wouldn't read the plaque or the context before and I'd make a preconceived notion about what I thought it was for and then be completely surprised when I read the text about what it was actually used for back in the day.
So the plaques are useful?
Yeah, they actually are to read.
Mason said the exhibit has had an impact.
Both the African American community and the white community have responded overwhelmingly positively. That people love these portraits. And the portraits said to me, we can explore a side of history through these portraits that has been not completely ignored, but hasn't been given its due.
Portraits like that of Henry Martin, a bell ringer, but also a man of dignity and a story to tell. A story that would long survive him. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nicole Ellis in Charlottesville, Virginia.